Thank you so much, Jenna, for that amazing film. It was an honor to premiere it here at STEMIEFest. Now we are going to have a panel of presenters from STEM Mini Chats, as well as contributors and developers of the amazing resources in the media Cubbies. Then a 15-minute break.
Now it's time for a conversation with our STEM Mini Chat and Media Cubbies presenters. Dr. Megan Vinh and Dr. Chih-Ing Lim are our moderators.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. This is wonderful. And I really enjoyed watching that. I know some maybe don't see it, but in the chat, there were some folks that were talking about how wonderful and how much they had tears in their eyes. So thank you again. And we are really excited to do this panel and to really talk about how STEM starts now and is for all children. And so what we're going to get started with is, we don't want to waste any more time hearing from me. So we're going to start with our panelists from our museums. So we have Lisa and Melanie and Allie and Michelle. And we wanted to start by saying thank you for all the great resources you shared within the Media Cubbies. You all provided kind of so many amazing experiences that we could use at home, or that we could use in classrooms or integrate into our coursework if you're faculty, or into other museums and libraries. For example, I know Michelle from the Boston Children's Museum, you shared some really amazing activities that incorporate art and some practical tips for engaging in STEAM at home. And Melanie and Allie, we know the Kids Museum shared some great resources that support STEM anywhere, and included some really great video demonstrations. Personally, I can't wait to use the geocaching resource fairly soon with my own son. He'll be really excited about that. And I know Lisa, the Bay Area Discovery Museum, you shared some really great videos on how you can build children's STEM learning at home with objects that can be found at home. And I can't wait to use the shake, rattle, and roll activity. Although I know, Ching, we learned from you that your family might be more excited about the light and shadows activity that isn't quite as noisy.
Oh, Megan, maybe so, but really I was drawn to it because it really gets back to our Southeast Asian roots of wayang kulit, which is a shadow puppet show, which is usually accompanied by a gamelan orchestra, which comprise of percussion instruments. And also, my son loves shadow puppets and music. And so, I don't think we're going to have a quiet light and shadow activity after all. And as we all know, STEM is really messy and noisy.
Thanks, Ching. So maybe with all that in mind, we would love Allie and Melanie and Lisa and Michelle. We'd love to hear from you about how you design STEM experiences within your museum to really maximize engagement, play, and fun for your visitors.
So we're Kids Children's Museum, and we're located in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and we design kind of open-ended, play-based STEM and STEAM experiences into all our learning environments, really believing firmly that you can integrate, whether actively or subtly, STEM or STEAM into all our different learning platforms. I would say, though, specifically that our Gravitron and our Makerspace and our Learning Garden, all of which were examples of which are in the Cubbies, are probably the areas that really best maximize our STEAM experiences. And we, too, similar to the Boston Children's Museum, we invite children and their caregivers to experiment, to explore, to investigate different materials, different tools, different processes, so they can organically go through the design thinking process at their own pace, have opportunities to fail, as the video just showed, and also just to engage and to learn and to grow. I think Allie probably can speak to some of the highlights from these programs, and in our digital STEM experience as well as the physical one.
Thanks, Melanie. Like she said, we have an outdoor garden space and a maker space that are very interactive. I mean, the whole museum is designed that way, but those places in particular, we have a program called Messy Mornings, which is more geared towards the younger kids. And usually they will operate on a theme. So we might do playing with ice. And then in the afternoons, we'll have a steamed up program, which is geared towards the slightly older kids, which will still be dealing with ice, for example, but will be more science-based, talking about, the way matter changes, that kind of thing. So we also have our garden space, which is more dear to my heart as a gardener. And the kids love just getting their hands in the dirt. So the toddlers, the 1 and 2, 3-year-olds just want to stick their hands in that dirt. But it can also be a learning opportunity. So we have a junior gardeners program. But of course, with the pandemic, we've moved all of that virtually online. So we've been creating some videos and an interactive garden website where they can learn more about our garden online. We also have some packs that we've been developing. They're called Discovery Packs. We got a grant to develop these. They are packs that when the museum was open, you could check out, and each one would have a theme like beautiful butterflies and a variety of activities that a family could do together. So they're a bit more inclusive because they are something that kids can do at their own pace. So if you're a little bit more advanced, you can do it more quickly. You can take your time to read it. They are translated. Some of them are already translated into Spanish and Mandarin, and the other ones are being translated now. So we're trying to meet all members of our community, not just those who speak English. But like Melanie said, we really try to focus on open-ended and interactive activities in all of our programs. All right,
thanks.
I'll pass it off.
Yeah, and Lisa, I'm going to throw it to you if you have. I'm sure you have something to add.
Yes, yeah. So I'm from the Bay Area Discovery Museum. We're located in Sausalito, so we're right across the bridge from San Francisco at the base of the Golden Gate Bridge. We're actually in a Golden Gate National Recreation Area, so we're part of a national park too. So we have a lot of indoor and outdoor spaces for children to explore. But when we think about exhibits, programs, online, anything we're designing, we actually use a framework called CREATE, and I'll put a link to it in the chat when I'm done talking. But the CREATE is an acronym, and each letter stands for a principle that we use and we think about when we're developing programs. So the C stands for child-directed. So we're always thinking about having the child in charge, right? If they ask a question, we're not giving the answer, that we're helping to kind of guide them to find the answer on their own, and we're following their own interests and letting them discover. The R stands for risk-friendly. And we're always trying to create a safe space for children to take a little risk, whether that's an emotional risk, a physical risk, even just meeting a new person, right, can be a risk for a small child. So how do we always create a safe space for children to try something new? The E stands for exploratory, and we heard about that a little bit already, that hands-on, open-ended, there's no one right way to do this. It can be messy, right? We can kind of tinker and play around. The A, which we heard a little bit about in the video too, is active, right? Kids need to move and they engage all of their senses at this age. And so how are we creating experiences that do that and are as active as possible? The T stands for time for imagination. So we're always trying to make sure, especially at this young age, that children have opportunities to engage in pretend play and use their imagination, because that really helps foster their creativity. And then the last E stands for exchange of ideas. And so for verbal children, that could mean, having a conversation with someone, building off another idea. But for nonverbal children too, it's even just building off of a cue, like a social cue of another child, or seeing that someone built something and getting an idea and incorporating it into their design as well. But how are children kind of taking ideas from one another to advance their own thinking? So that's a framework that we use that guides all of our activities, and I'll put a link to it in the chat as well.
Thanks, Lisa. And Michelle, I wanted to make sure you had a little time. I know you shared a lot yesterday as well, so you may have, so I'll turn it over to you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So a lot of very similar to our friends at other museums. We really try to make everything in our STEAM programming very open-ended, very hands-on, and really try to look at there's not a specific end learning goal in the program, but we really think about what we call STEAM habits of mind and skills, which we talked a little bit at our workshop yesterday about. And those are things like collaboration, creativity, persistence, and really that's the goal of our program when we want to engage visitors, especially really young visitors in STEAM. And in our museum in particular, we add that that A into STEM, so it becomes STEAM and art spaces. So we have particular areas in the museum that are very focused on STEAM itself, and we'll do a bunch of different pop-up programs, especially working with our youngest visitors in the museum. We always try to make sure that we're dealing with a lot of different materials. I love sharing about messy mornings. We have messy Mondays at the museum and funky Fridays. So we like to do things that really get kids into things like ice and mud, water play, really giving them the opportunity to get their hands on different materials. We always try to make sure we have a range of different materials and also a range of access points. So with wind play, there would be different size materials to play with and explore, and just really encourage talking to kids, seeing what they notice, what they observe, and really going about it, questioning and talking to them and helping encourage them as they play and explore.
Thanks, everyone. And I know you said you'll put your resources in the chat, but we'll also make sure you have access to the Media Cubbies link, where there is a ton of great resources from all these folks. And Chih-Ing, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk a little bit about, to start talking a little bit about the music connection that we've seen throughout the week.
Yep. Thanks, Megan. So I think, a lot of us have been enjoying the really amazing music at STEMIEFest, compliments of the bebop mechanics. And so Carlos, really thanks for being here and for helping to produce the music. And we really love the way that you've shown the connection between STEM and exploration and music, and it really showcases how we can use familiar songs like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star to help young children explore the world around them. So a question for you is, how important is technology in the world of a Grammy Award-winning music engineer?
Well, technology has really kind of become how it works. Like we did this entire album through Zoom. People were recording in their own places with their own microphones, their own systems. So all that is completely technology. One of the things that had to be done was when musicians can play together in a recording studio, they can vibe off each other, and they can kind of, they're looking at each other, listening to each other. We didn't have that in this, so it had to, technology had to bridge that gap that we had while making this. So what we ended up doing was we created one session or one basic rhythm, which was like a click track or a tempo, and everyone got to record to that. So everyone was recording to the same rhythm. So in one way they were kind of playing with each other, but technically not. So again, the technology allowed that to happen. It would have been impossible without where we are today.
Mm-hmm. And Joanne and Anthony, thanks for all the amazing videos that the Little Orchestra Society has put together for Maker Fest. I saw that your programs aspire to help children and families from all socioeconomic backgrounds to achieve their fullest potential through the arts. And I'm wondering if you could just share more on your philosophy for how music and arts can support exploration and play for young children. And how might you see this as an opportunity to support each and every child to reach their fullest potential, including young children with disabilities? I know that's a mouthful.
So the Little Orchestra Society has been around for 74 years and really has changed a lot over the years. And we're really all about meeting the needs of all young people and all New Yorkers. So in a typical year, not this year, we would be presenting live concerts in a concert hall. We would be working with schools and children in the New York City public schools. We'd be working in community spaces, public libraries, senior centers, public housing facilities, museums, and behind it all is the idea of exploration and creativity. And it really resonates with what all of you have been saying about the work that you do. And specifically with very young children and children with disabilities, the opportunity to say yes, you can all create, you can all express your feelings and ideas, you can all communicate with each other and collaborate with each other is so important to us. And it's the thread that goes through every single kind of programming that we do. And it really is about this is possible for everyone. And again, there's no way of failing. You have to just keep trying. It's exciting, and when our children compose their own music in the public schools, we bring in professional musicians toward the end of their residency to play their pieces for them. And the amount of self-esteem, pride, just thrill for all of them is fantastic. And when we bring funders or when we go to visit schools, we never really walk into the classroom knowing that this is a gifted and talented classroom, a general classroom, a special needs classroom. It really is about everyone having the ability to engage with all of this and for it to be successful and exciting and brilliant. And what we want is for them to fall in love with the process of hearing music and making music. So that's a mouthful also. I'm going to turn it over to Anthony.
To connect with what Joanne said, and it's an important philosophical underpinning of our programs and also something that we saw in the video, that to really manage our own assumptions of what kids are capable of and what we expect that people are able to do. And like Joanne said, when we work with a school, we don't decide to work with any specific class. When we work with a grade, we work with every class that's on a grade. So some classes can be just a normal or whatever that means class. Some classes could be gifted and talented, and others could be a bridge class or an ICT class. But the way we construct our programs, we don't assume what kids are or aren't capable of in any of those classes. We create them the same way. We let kids work with each other in the same exact ways. And when funders come in, when I visit the classroom, when teachers come in, often you see no difference. So in us and working with children, especially, we use the same philosophical underpinning and the same expectations of everybody, and everybody meets those high expectations. And so it's a really great springboard into letting so much creativity happen as it connects with other studies that the kids are doing, including STEAM and anything that connects with the arts.
And thank you both so much for that, because I know we've gotten a few questions this week, throughout the week, on sort of why STEM for children with disabilities. And I think that sort of connects to the idea that if we need to really think about how we include all children, that it's up to us as sort of the adults to make sure that we're thinking about, do we need to add extra supports? Or like you said, how do we make sure that we're giving kids the same opportunity and not limiting them before we even get in the door? So I really appreciated that, the message that you said there with holding high expectations for all children, and really engaging in this STEM work, that STEM is for everyone.
And I think we had, you met some of our teaching artists, our educators in the Cubbies and in the videos, and they are chosen specifically because they have the capacity to engage with all children, and that they're great musicians and they're wonderful composers themselves. But on top of that, they really buy into the idea that all children can do this. And that's such an important piece of what we do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And actually, I think this jumps into our sort of the next piece. And I wanted to say hi, Beth, and thanks for being with us this week and for sharing the great resources that you have from the Iowa Region Center for Early Developmental Education. But sort of being on this same theme, I really enjoyed the teacher tips that you put together on sort of how you might think about arranging the environment or really interacting with children to deepen their STEM learning by engaging in that authentic problem solving. And I think one of the other things that has come up throughout the week is sort of why STEM for infants and toddlers. And so I really appreciated that you have lots of resources from the Region Center on kind of how you could do some of these, how you could provide experiences to infants and toddlers that could really be easily embedded into anything. And so I wanted to sort of get your take on why you think STEM is important for infants and toddlers, and what strategies you think might be critical to ensuring that each and every infant and toddler gets the opportunities to explore.
Thank you. I think a lot of us think of STEM as something to achieve later in life, when really infants and toddlers are engaging in STEM from the very beginning. It's already part of their daily lives. And when we take the time and observe them at work, this becomes more apparent to us. When we observe what they are doing, we find out what their interest is with the materials that are around them, and what their interest in is within the world and how those materials work. And that's the very beginning of science learning. Our close observation of infants and toddlers helps us to be more intentional in what kinds of additional materials to offer children and to support their problem solving. And we don't want to jump in too quickly and hijack what their questions might be. I think that's something that I had to really work on in my own work with children. I think I know where they need to go, and I need to be patient and watch them, and then they let me know what their questions are, and I can be a better support for them. We're at our best when we follow their lead through their interests instead of trying to get them to follow our agenda. And at the Iowa Region Center, we work really hard to think about moving beyond activities and instead thinking more holistically in terms of experiences over time. And this fits very well in with the NSTA Early Childhood Science Education Position Statement that was adopted by NACE. We're part of the NACE Early Childhood Science Interest Forum that meets monthly over Zoom but to support each other in this. And this position statement is always something that we go back to, and it's all about following children's needs. But for technology with infants, they use all kinds of materials as tools, and they even use people as tools to solve problems, and that's technology. For engineering, infants and toddlers engineer many different kinds of things in order to solve problems that they find. And when their attempts are unsuccessful, they rethink and they try something new and different. And then mathematics, they're always exploring spatial understanding even before they're verbal or learn number. Exploration with materials is essential for infants and toddlers' mathematical development. And research is showing that the transfer of 2D to 3D understanding is not automatic. It takes a lot of hands-on experiences with materials from the very beginning. We also believe it is important to understand how powerful it is to understand typical development beginning from infant and toddler for inclusive STEM. Once you understand this typical development, it helps educators think about how to present materials in different ways to children with disabilities and what they might be interested in. I'm going to put a few links to things in the chat and then talk about them. Is that all right with you?
Sure.
If people are having trouble conceptualizing what this might be, we do have on our website what we call professional learning, and we do have some videos of what we offer for the infants and toddlers. And one piece is work that was built off of Rosemary Geiken's research on force and motion with young children. And she did some research with balls and tubes, with clear plastic tubes and balls. And we have worked that into professional learning with infants and toddlers. Another piece of research that Dr. Jill Eulenberg has done for the Iowa Region Center is thinking, and with Rosemary, is contents and containers, where they're exploring space with infants and toddlers. That's professional learning that we offer for educators. We've also worked on developing sound with infants and toddlers. We've looked at block play with infants and toddlers. And we are just putting together the final touches on light and shadow with infants and toddlers. Just to give people a little bit more of an idea of what that looks like, we have lots of experience sheets that are all ready that kind of give an overview. And if they want to do some toe dipping on what that might be in their own settings, they're welcome. Those are all free resources. We find that other teachers come back with us with new ideas. So we love that. Alone we can be good, but together we're great. So the sharing of ideas and research is just powerful for everyone. The final thing I'm going to share is something that we have started to add. We've always embedded some inclusion in our professional learning, but we think we need to be more intentional about that too. And Mary Donegan Ritter has written a lot on including inclusive STEM education, especially with preschool. And so we are building that into our website as well. And so that content isn't quite available yet, but the page is there, and we're going to be making that live as we add to it.
And thanks, Beth. That was really great. I think it's important what you said about sort of seeing what children are doing and sort of supporting that natural kind of curiosity and exploration. And it seems like I think it leads right nicely into our next piece where we want to talk a little about pre-service and in-service PD is sort of the way that how do we make sure that we support practitioners with sort of understanding how to sort of do that wait. I know as somebody who's terrible with wait time and wanting to jump in, that how do you do that to really think about how you can support people in building off where kids are and what they're already doing. And so Chih-Ing, I'll turn it over to you.
Mm-hmm. Yep, so we do have Jenny, who's with us from the National Center on Early Childhood Development, Teaching and Learning, which is a national TA center to support Head Start and early Head Start practitioners. And thanks, Jenny, for sharing some of those wonderful resources on exploring STEAM from birth to 5 and also the understanding STEAM and how children use it. And I think I've used the second document with some of my pre-service teachers, and they found it really helpful because I think it gives a lot of tips on how to do the STEM talk. And also we have with us Susan, who's from the Early Edu Alliance at the University of Washington. And the Early Edu Alliance is a collaboration of early childhood experts and stakeholders working to meet the needs for high-quality degree programs that are accessible, affordable, and relevant. And so thanks, Susan, also for sharing your very comprehensive sets of resources that can be used by early childhood higher ed faculty. And my question for both of you is, how can we better support practitioners, whether in service or pre-service, with supporting young children with disabilities in STEM?
Let me start first with pre-service, and because that's the primary mission of the Early Edu Alliance. And we have been developing college courses that are available both for in-person and online delivery. And the course that's most relevant to the topic today is Cognition and General Knowledge. And that course includes modules on science, math, and logic and reasoning. And the courses include everything that you might need: a syllabus, presentation materials, assignments, rubrics for grading, and all sorts of things like that. A couple of the important features of our courses is that they include lots of embedded video. So we think it's important to see the practice in action. And so there are lots of examples of what the teaching practices look like. And then another important feature are practice-based assignments. So we ask that students do the practice, and they get an opportunity to get feedback, both by using video to upload their assignment, their practice-based assignment, and they get feedback from their instructor, who in fact is becoming a job-embedded coach, as well as a college instructor, and also from their peers, because they're joining in with communities of reflection and practice. So that's a nice little course, and as I say, it's available for both online and in-person delivery. And those courses can be used in conjunction with lots of other professional development resources that we have developed, both as Early Edu Alliance and then as our in conjunction with some of our other partners. So in order to individualize, we have the in-service suites that are actually available on ECL-CASE, and those are all about how do you make individualized modifications, such as using environmental arrangements or child preferences or peer support. And then for those children who might need it, who need more specialized instruction, how can you design that instruction and embed instruction into ongoing activities and routines so they can truly take advantage of those activities and routines and participate fully. So there are materials available about how to create those embedded instructional episodes. And then the other thing that we put into the Cubby is called Circle Time Magazine, and that's developed by our partners at Cultivate Learning, where we are actually located. And that is an archived video show. And season 1 was all about math. And there's an accompanying magazine that goes along with it. And it includes ideas for how to individualize. So those are a few ideas to get started for both kind of conventional college coursework and ongoing support. So Janie, why don't you expand on that?
Yeah, so I was just going to add that on the Early Childhood Learning and Knowledge Center website, which we can put in the chat box, which is the Head Start hub for resources. The links that I shared on the Cubbies were for a STEM series that we had as part of our Teacher Time series. And so we had a set of webinars that were really intended to be a break for teachers. So more of the ongoing in-service training that teachers need. And so we have a series on STEM, both for infants and toddlers, and then another for preschoolers. And for each of the videos, we included some thinking about how might you modify activities for a child with a disability, knowing full well that it's so individualized and so dependent on many different factors. But that video series is also there for you. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I think, this, I appreciate all of the great resources that we're getting. I know I wanted to move, and actually I think it connects really nicely to what Janie and Susan, you all were talking about. And I hope folks, recognize too, as participants and attendees, that we have a wide range of folks that are on these calls, right? We have folks that are faculty, we have practitioners, we have families, and also we have our museum friends and our friends from libraries and other places. And so I think it's really important that, we're looking across as how do we think about the breadth of our system to really make sure that young children with disabilities can have opportunities and are really fully engaged in STEM. And so with that, I wanted to move to Jessica and Bonnie, who I thought did a wonderful mini chat on STEM instructional strategies. And there was some great conversation on your page or within the mini chat page on, young children with disabilities and why this is so important. And I thought you got some really great questions from participants. And so I pulled some of them that I thought were really important to answer sort of in a live format. And so the first that I thought we would ask is, Tony had shared a question about parents and teachers potentially being intimidated by the unplanned nature of STEM activities, which I think Beth, you hit upon earlier. And so it's sort of that idea, like, what if a child asks a question and I don't know the answer? And so thinking about, and she goes on to say, we're used to teaching concepts that we know very well, whereas answering complex science, engineering, and robotics questions can be really scary. So her question was, how can we help teachers and parents and practitioners feel more confident in supporting STEM without having to feel like they're an electrical engineer?
Yeah, I thought that was a really excellent question, and it really hits at the heart of why teaching STEM in early childhood can be difficult. And so I think what we want to do when kids ask questions or we're in a situation where we don't know the answer is really say, I'm not really sure what the answer is, and use that as an opportunity to teach dispositions of scientists that if you don't know, you figure it out. And that might mean you Google something or you look in a children's book or you design a little experiment, but really trying to really show through your own actions the behaviors of a scientist, and not in making it clear that it's okay to not know something. And that's something that it's really hard for us to do. It's hard for children to do, and it's also hard for adults to do. And so it's really important to model that it's okay to not know, and you just have to try and find out. And I also think it's important for us, as those of us who are prepare pre-service teachers, to think about what are we teaching in our preparation programs, and how can we better prepare people who are going to be teachers to feel comfortable with STEM concepts.
Yeah, I completely agree with Jessica. I think that it is, as teachers, we feel like we need to know all the answers. And it really used to be that that's like the teacher gave all the information and they were the only like main resource, but that's really not the way our world works anymore, and isn't the way scientists think either. And so just giving them that opportunity to show that we struggle with that too. Oh, I don't know. What can I do? How can I model what a scientist would do in this situation to find the answer? And teaching them, what do you do when you don't know, is really going to help them with all kinds of things throughout their life, and to be better at all kinds of STEM concepts. If we give them the tools to find the answer and not just always to look for the teacher as the only source of information.
Yeah, and I thank you both for that. And I also thought the one of the other questions within your session was Rebecca asked, and I think this is really a highly relevant question within our current context, as we're all, I think everyone can see we're all on camera and we're all using Zoom and we're virtual. And so I think the question was, how can you implement some of these strategies in a remote context?
Yeah, and one of the other panelists, I forgot who it was, that it's really hard to like say, this is what you should do, because we all know it's so different based on students' needs
Right.
and things like that. But I think that we know that it's still some of the same things that they need. They need hands-on experiences. They need things that they can do. So if you're doing some kind of remote thing, how are you showing it through video? How are you giving them multiple means to learn and touch these things and be engaged with them in lots of different ways? How have you done some pre-planning? What do you know about your students, and what do you know that they need? Like, don't just in the minute go, oh, this isn't working, what can I do? I mean, we do that too. That's important. But can you think about it ahead of time? Can you plan for the student? Do they need some kind of like task analysis of the steps? Do they need some visuals? What is it that they need that we can get them before the session that's going to help them be really, really successful with this online learning format?
And two, I think thinking about what if they're in their homes receiving instruction virtually, what is in their homes that is related to STEM? So one of my favorite STEM activities that we talked about in our session or our video was, mixing toilet paper and water. Well, thankfully now the toilet paper shortage is more or less over. So most people have toilet paper and water in their house, and that's a great STEM activity. So I think being creative and thinking about how you can utilize resources in the home that aren't going to be expensive for families, that are really going to be showing them how you can take pots and pans and a wooden stick and turn that into a STEM activity potentially is important.
And I think this is such a critical conversation and question that I know we have just a couple minutes, but we wanted to ask this question sort of everyone or anyone who might want to answer is, how can we implement some of these things remotely, given that this is sort of the current context? And I think, Beth, thank you for putting in the resource from your center on the modules. But I'd love to open it. I know Lisa and Allie and Michelle and Melanie. I was trying to find you all in my thing. I know you all had some, have been doing some things as your museums were closed. And Beth, I know you've been doing some work. So I'd love to hear from others on how can we implement these strategies remotely and ensure all children can engage in STEM?
Yeah, I'll chime in. I think it's a big challenge, number one. So I think we're all still trying to work together and figure out the best way to do this, especially for young children, and thinking about, equity issues around technology too. And so I think a lot of us are using a kind of multi-pronged approach, right? And thinking about, are there videos that are pre-recorded, that are short, that could be watched on your phone if you need it, and you wouldn't necessarily need a computer, but kind of gives you a jump start to do something and engage with materials you might have just outside or around your house. Are there sort of the synchronous kinds of experiences, right, where then you can be asking those guiding questions and doing that more prompting for an open-ended kind of experience, but keeping in mind that young children aren't going to sit in front of the screen for very long. and then I think we're also, and with a lot of others, thinking about how we actually just get kits and materials and resources, even scissors and tape and things that we might assume that families have, but how are we making sure that that children have at home the materials that are going to help them to have a rich experience and can be used in a variety of different ways.
Thanks,
I can
Lisa.
build on that.
Go ahead, Melanie.
Say that, so KidsU launched a program called KidsU at Home, and we brought basically our home museum and all of its programs online. And there is I don't want to call it a documentary, it's hardly that, in the Cubby, but just trying to kind of give examples. And one of the issues or the stumbling blocks we ran into, just to build off what Lisa said about equity, was this digital divide and recognizing that not everyone had access to Kids at Home. And so we launched also a multi-prong approach, and we started to work with the hunger relief organizations in our community. And we were able to give materials and kind of printed bilingual activities and suggestions or nudges to children that were receiving, that were food insecure and that were receiving lunch. So that was one way that we tried to bridge that. But it's something that we're all struggling with, I think, quite a bit, and thinking about accessibility, not just kind of socioeconomic accessibility, but certainly as we're talking about different kinds of learners. And are we acting and being as inclusive as we can? So.
Yeah, thanks, Melanie and Lisa. And I didn't mean to leave out Joanne and Anthony and Carlos when I was sort of starting, because I think, as we've been seeing, there's lots of great videos that sort of are connecting arts and STEM and doing STEAM. And I know, Beth, you unmuted, so I'm sure but I wanted to sort of also recognize that I didn't mean to leave you out when I asked the question, because I think there's a lot of great activities within the Little Orchestra Society and with the bebop mechanics that we've seen throughout the week that could also be things that you could use at home. And I think if a big takeaway is STEM doesn't have to be expensive, and STEM is for all. So I hope that we conveyed that as well. But I'll pause and see if somebody else wants to add something in the last 1 minute.
I can add, think about cooking with kids. That's something that everybody does. Everybody prepares a meal. And even just looking at the technology of the tools that you use in cooking, doing reverse engineering of the grater, that kind of thing. Noticing that noodles are hard before you immerse them in boiling water, and soft after. And sometimes if you leave them out on the plate, they go back to hard overnight. So getting parents to understand that just doing those everyday experiences and observing a little bit more closely through the lens of STEM opens a whole new world for them.
Thank you. And thank you all again for joining us and for having this conversation. I know there was a lot of folks, and so I think we'll have to think about too how we make sure that we all have continue to share these great resources and ideas, because it seems like we are going to need to be really innovative as we continue to move forward within the current pandemic. So we cannot thank you enough for being here and for sharing in the message that STEM really is for everyone, and that we need to find good ways to engage all learners in it. And Chih-Ing, I don't know if you have any closing thoughts, but I think we are at time.
Yeah, I think so. And I think for the participants, if you haven't explored the media Cubbies as well as the STEM mini chats, you still have a chance, like later today and And also, I think after the STEMIEFest, you'll be there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Carlos. I saw your final thought that music is math and science at its purest and simplest. Thank you again. That's great.
Mm-hmm. Welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. And hopefully during this, you couldn't hear my dog snoring behind me. So
I have dogs and kids in the background as well. So
yes. All right. Well, thank you again. And I think we have a break right now. So thanks again. And we hope that you'll join us after the break for our next session.